Hello everyone and welcome to our next Flight Director training video. In this video we are demonstrating how to direct the Contaminant mission. Contaminant is a short duration mission lasting only about 45 minutes. It takes place in 3 stretches of a fictional Upahara River and includes topics such as aquatic ecosystems, acidity, and environmental protection. This video assumes you have already reviewed the Flight Director Controls training videos and are generally comfortable with the controls. I'll demonstrate many elements in the controls here in this video, but only as far as they relate to the Contaminant mission. I recommend that you grab a copy of the mission script and follow along during this video. As is always the case, before the mission begins, the crew should have been assigned their stations, briefed about their mission objectives, and given about 15 minutes in training mode to practice their controls. Before we dive into this mission, let me briefly review what Contaminant is all about. Sudura City is an isolated city in the middle of a large forested region. Despite being far from any other city, it has recently begun to grow rapidly because Vikasa Corporation has opened a fertilizer factory along the shore of Upahara River, which resulted in hundreds of new workers moving into the region. Recently, Sudura City had an unexplained outbreak of the Chandipara virus, a dangerous disease that infects children, causing comas and even death. So far, about 1,000 children have been infected, many of whom have died. The Chandipara virus is transmitted by sandflies, a small type of biting midge whose population are unusually high this year for unknown reasons. To make matters worse, all the fish have disappeared, also for unknown reasons, causing a severe food shortage. The underlying cause behind all this is believed to be tied to the Upahara River, but there's a problem. Vikasa Corporation purchased the property rights to the entire river when they opened their factory, and they are not allowing anyone to enter it, even despite the emergency conditions. Having no alternative, the governor of Sudura City has called upon the Infinity Knights to investigate the source of this strange plague and the disappearance of the fish to save their city before it's too late. So that's the background. Now let's show you how to run the mission. Once the crew is ready to begin, go to the mission panel and use the handy tools in the lower portion of the screen. End training mode, which will reveal the Infinity Knights hangar bay on the main view screen. Select Contaminant from the mission list and press the Load Mission button. Call the crew as the Admiral and ask if they have any last-minute questions before their mission. Remind the captain that the mission is of the utmost importance and that stealthiness is key. Also, remind the crew that the upstream part of the Upahara River is private property, owned and controlled by the Vikasa Corporation, who is not allowing anyone to enter their private property. Explain that the crew must shrink their ship and use its advanced stealth system to disguise itself as a fish to explore the river undetected. To be convincing, the crew should not move faster than 20% of their max speed in the river. If they moved any faster than that, the Vikasa Corporation will detect them and jeopardize the mission. Use the handy tools to trigger the shrink effect. Speak as the computer to narrate that the ship is being shrunk to the size of a standard riverfish. Then click on the Begin Mission button. This will play an animation sequence and transport the ship into the downstream section of the Upahara River. Give the crew a minute or two to get their bearings and get used to their controls. Watch their speed. If the crew begins moving faster than 20% of their max speed, speak as the mechanic or computer to warn them about being detected. Also tell them not to fly above the surface of the water. They're supposed to be fish, after all. Finally, make sure the ship's stealth system is always on. This will protect the ship from detection, but it will also increase the radiation levels on the ship, which gives the doctor something to take care of. Call the crew as the governor of Sudura City. Prompt them to begin taking scientific measurements of the water, as well as its fish and insect populations. Near the beginning of the mission, there will be lots of fish and insect life around the river, but as the crew progresses upstream, almost all the species disappear. The crew should take note of this, determine which species are dying off, and come up with theories about why this is the case. The crew must rely on the deck chief to scan the area. If the deck chief is having difficulty, give him or her some helpful encouragement by speaking as the mechanic or providing assistance as the computer. The crew should begin working its way up the river. After the crew has scanned and explored for a few minutes, send the first sensor report. This report is pre-written and available in the Handy Tools section of the mission panel. It indicates that key measurements are largely normal in this part of the river. Help the crew analyze this report and conclude that the source of the problem must be further upstream. This mission is fairly linear, and the crew should move up the river naturally. Along the way, toss in a few events to keep the entire crew fully engaged. For example, unbeknownst to the crew, a saboteur from Bicasa Corporation has sneaked on board and is attempting to stop them. Completely damage the shields, offer no explanation, but make sure the crew realizes it happened.
Hello, Captain. It's me, the mechanic. I just noticed that the shields seemed to have been damaged. Are you seeing that too? I'm not sure what happened. Very strange. Hopefully the engineers can fix it up in a jiffy.
After a while, the crew will enter a midstream section of the Upahara River. As before, encourage the crew to scan the area's fish, insects, and water quality. Once again, let's mess things up on the ship to help them discover that they have a saboteur on board. This time, completely damage the engines. Speak as the mechanic to affirm that the ship did not crash into anything. Suggest foul play and encourage the security guards to investigate.
Hello, Captain. It's me again. Now our engines have completely failed, and I can guarantee it wasn't because we crashed into anything. The pilot's doing a mighty fine job keeping us clear of all these rocks. I'm really not sure how this happened. Things don't just mysteriously break like that. Something seems fishy to me. I recommend having the security guards and some patrols out to investigate.
You can facilitate this by creating a new security alert. Simply specify that the shields have mysteriously been damaged and see how the crew responds. They'll probably dispatch some security personnel to take a look. Don't worry about responding to this right away. It's important to create the sense that these virtual security officers are doing a real investigation throughout the lower decks of the ship. Also, take this opportunity to remind the crew to keep their speed below 20% to avoid detection. This is a good time to go yellow alert. Set the lights to yellow and make sure some intense or suspenseful music is playing. Now it's time to send the second sensor report. This is pre-written, available in the handy tools. It indicates that stonefly, mayfly, and fish populations are all declining in this part of the river. Also, sandfly populations and algae biovolumes are rising. Dissolved oxygen levels have dropped. Conversely, the water's pH has become increasingly acidic, and the levels of nitrates in the water have risen. Guide the crew in discussing the results of their scans. As the computer, point out that stoneflies, mayflies, and fish do not survive well in polluted waters. Conversely, the sandflies are hardy enough to survive in these conditions, and without the presence of competing insects and predator fish, their populations have surged. Also, the nitrates in the water have contributed to algae biovolume growth. Depending on the crew's ability, you can either emphasize or simplify the elements of this report. Next, call the crew as the governor of the Sudura city and ask for a status report. Allow the crew to summarize their findings and create a hypothesis to explain them. Then encourage the crew to continue their search upstream, but remind them that the upstream region is Vicasa's corporation, private property, and that stealth is of the utmost importance. Now it's time to create another saboteur attack. Completely damage the sensors. Speaking as the computer or mechanic, confirm that this is indeed the result of a sabotage. Allow the security guards to locate the saboteur and escort him to the brig. You can do this with student actors if you have any at your disposal. Otherwise, you can report that the virtual security guards have captured the saboteur by using the security alert screen. Guide the crew further upstream until they enter the upstream section of the Upahara River. Speaking as the computer, warn the crew that they are entering private property and must remain in stealth mode. Send the crew a warning message from the Vicasa Corporation. This is pre-written and available in the handy tools. It states that their presence is known and instructs them to leave their private property. Just like before, guide the crew in collecting data on the area's fish, insects, and water quality. Then use handy tools to send this third sensor report. This report indicates that only sandflies are detected. All other fish and insects have died off. The water is extremely unsuitable for life. Now, thanks to its saboteur, Vicasa Corporation knows that the crew is nearby, but its stealth system prevents them from locating them. Go to the sensor screen, select the Vikasa Corporation patrol ship, and use it to hack the ship. Shortly after the ship arrives in the upstream section of the river, they will discover a waterfall flowing into the river. At the base of the waterfall, where the pure water is most concentrated, a group of fish survivors are huddled together. Help the crew think about and understand why the water is pure and why the fish have gathered there. Before the crew moves beyond the waterfall, call the crew as the governor of Sudura City and ask for a report. When the crew mentions the discovery of the fish, urgently instruct them to escort these fish to their spawning ground upstream, so they can lay eggs and repopulate the river to provide food for the following year. This adds a new layer to the crew's mission. Then, speaking as the mechanic, point out that the fish can't survive in these toxic waters without protection. Explain that you can extend the ship's shields to create a protective bubble around the fish. But in order to do this, the crew must turn off their stealth system, which will allow the Vikasa Corporation patrol ships to detect them. Guide the crew as they weigh the risks and choose to escort the fish without their stealth. Narrate the action so the entire crew feels the dramatic tension.
All right, Captain, but if the pilot can just get us a bit closer to the fish, I can extend our shield around them. That's it, a bit closer. Got it! Okay, Captain, the fish are nice and safe within our shield.
Warning, the stealth system is offline. The Vikasa Corporation can now detect this vessel.
Once the crew disables its health system and raises its shields, make the fish survivors follow the ship. You can do this by clicking this button here in the handy tools. At the same time, set the lights to red and cue up some intense combat music. We're now entering the climax of the mission. The crew can then guide the fish up the river. Before long, they'll approach a bend in the river with the Vikasa Corporation on the other side. Before they get too close, select the Vikasa Corporation's patrol ship and have it attack the ship. The crew will face a choice: stop and fight the patrol ship, or continue upstream with the fish. Speaking as the mechanic, encourage the crew to keep moving forward as fast as possible. Insist that there isn't time to stop and confront the patrol ships. Doing so may kill the remaining fish. As the crew races further upstream, they will pass by Vikasa Corporation's dumping grounds, where they will see toxic waste in the river. Make sure the crew understands that Vikasa Corporation acted illegally. Part of their agreement with Sudura City was that they would take good care of the environment. Call the crew as a representative of the Vikasa Corporation. Demand that they leave and assert innocence of any wrongdoing. Allow the crew to accuse the Vikasa Corporation of polluting the river. Rationalize this through the economics of business. Proper waste disposal is expensive, and customers aren't willing to pay more for their fertilizer. Demand the crew surrender, and then increase the attacks against the ship. Allow the combat to destroy many of the ship's systems, but keep the engines functioning so the ship can keep moving upstream. Once the crew passes the toxic dumping grounds, the water will be clean again. Allow the crew to release the fish and engage the patrol ships in an epic battle. The ship will be pretty beat up by this point, so they'll be fighting for their lives. Have all the patrol ships converge on the crew, severely damaging most of the ship in the battle. Narrate the action to keep everyone on the same page.
Warning, the Vikasa Corporation patrol ship is coming about. It is locking weapons. It is firing. Impact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Direct hit. Sensors are offline.
The goal here is to keep the crew on the brink of death without actually destroying them. You may need to protect a few key systems like shields, weapons, and the engines to keep the ship functional. When hope is almost lost, allow the crew to defeat the patrol ships. Then, call the crew as the governor of Sudura City. Allow the crew to explain what they discovered about Vikasa Corporation and the toxic waste. Thank the crew for their heroic deeds and promise to bring Vikasa Corporation to justice and clean the river to restore its fragile ecosystem. Then, recall the ship to headquarters. Speaking as the Infinity Knights Admiral, congratulate the crew on successfully completing their mission.
Captain, you did it! Because of your fearless actions, the fish populations have been saved. Sudura City will have food once again.
Also, the Vicasa Corporation will be forced to clean up the polluted river. Without the pollutant, the river's ecosystem can return to normal, and Sedora City will be able to get the Shandapura virus under control. Congratulations, Captain and crew, for successfully completing your mission. Give yourselves a big round of applause.
Play the victory music, and let the crew congratulate themselves as they leave the ship. And that's Contaminant. Thanks for watching this training video, and we'll see you next time.